Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy. Joining me again, Hartwell. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everybody.
So, this morning, the subject that you picked to talk about was you and me. So, we're going to be talking about our personal mythology and stories. So, can you just give us a little bit of background about, like the sun, earth personality and designs and things like that before we get into it?
Um, yes. So I've always been fascinated by the search for identity. Who am I? Why am I here? And, part of that arose out of my sense of, not being good enough. And it's like, is there a way for me to appreciate myself? And I think I started studying astrology very young because I wanted to get a sense of what my value was in the world and how I could show up in the world in a strong way. And astrology gave me a language to understand, oh, this is what I'm about. And it gave me a way of seeing how that was different from other people. And when human design came along, that was even that desire was facilitated even. And then I was very interested in fantasy fiction and mythology. I read all sorts of fairy tales when I was a kid. And I really liked what I learned. I didn't study it very formally, but Jungian psychology, which is all about individuation and becoming oneself. And Joseph Campbell, was big in what was it, the 70s, 80s, that idea of the journey of the hero. And all of this is fascinating. And I think, when people, I'm using the language of archetypes and mythology and fairy tale and purpose and design. But when people speak about mission, what is my mission in life? What is my purpose in life? That's another way of saying the exact same thing. What is my mythology? What story am I living out? What grand overarching sort of thing am I living out? And this is something that human design gives us a really clear sense of.
And how does it do that?
Well, first of all, it shows us or tells us that the sun and the earth on the personality side and the sun and earth on the design side, and we could call these core essence. We could call the sun our core essence. We could call the earth our grounding. These make up 70% of the programming, or the 70% of how we're influenced to be in the world is those four placements. And so there are other aspects of human design that speak to this as well. And we may go into that in a little series right now. I haven't decided fully yet. But, these make up your incarnation cross, those four things, which is another way of saying, this is your underlying purpose. And so if we look at those things and, contemplate them as we have been, the shadow, the gift, and the city, then we begin to get a real sense of the dynamics that are motivating us and are living through us, you could say. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So this does always bring up the question. Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry.
This always brings up the question of whether our lives are fated or whether we have free will. That's always been a big topic in astrology, and it's the same thing for human design.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both.
I think so too.
Yeah, like we have a basic design or a destiny to get there, but what that looks like, we have free will, right, to get there. So
Yes, it's like we're going to get to Rome, but we can fly to Britain first, or we can take an ocean sailing voyage to Spain and make our way to Rome.
mhm.
So we, or it could go the Far East and take the, a land route. But so one of the things that comes up for me when I think of these things is this ties in tarot as well. Is a tarot reading describing your life? That is, this is what's going to happen. This, and this. This is what's going to happen. Or is it prescribing something to you, as in, do this and it's going to have this effect? So I think there's a linkage between the idea of fate and free will and the idea of what I'm calling prescription. Are you being prescribed something, or is it simply describing something? And so if it's simply describing something, it's like, oh, well, that's going to happen anyway. It's like, okay, I guess I better just sit back and enjoy the ride or not, because maybe the ride isn't enjoyable for you, So we're having a hurricane force winds and, which is going to down tree branches and cause flash flooding. Is that going to be your life? Is that the description? Or is there something that you can do to trim your sails of your life so that you actually go in the direction that you're wanting to go? And so what's my answer to this? Well, I think there's got to be some sort of holistic or higher order way of perceiving this, because just as you say, there's fate and free will. I think that our own awareness makes a difference in terms of whether we live out our life in a way that feels like we're at the mercy of something. We're just experiencing the weather of our life, which is the descriptive part. Or can we cultivate our intention and our awareness and do things that support us to go in the right direction?
Well, with the awareness comes the discernment, right? Of making the choices and the decision as to what your experience will be like.
Right, which is very much the serenity prayer, right? That so many people know of and find comfort in. Help me discern the difference between what I have control over and what I don't, and the wisdom to make a difference for myself and for other people potentially. So how does this, because the topic for this this mini class, this little lecture here, is the idea of personal mythology. Do you think that's an interesting topic for people, Kris?
Well, people are always interested in diving deeper, so yeah.
Well, I'm checking out my language here, because my course of study in my life has oriented me towards a particular kind of, I like fantasy fiction and Lord of the Rings and quests and heroes and magic and all of that. And so not everybody uses that language. So I'm seeking to find, right now I'm using my own language because you guys are my own listeners.
Yeah. Well, those that resonate it will be here, and those that won't. So, you're allowed to express yourself the way that you need to, right?
Exactly. And so is every single person. So, and that's the exciting thing about human design. It tells us what is real to you, what is important to you. So why don't we use an example? Because we've been talking about personal mythology. What can I get out of it? Or how do I work with it a little bit? I thought that it might be interesting for you to comment on mine. Do you feel like you want to do that, Kris? Or shall I just use you and I for an example?
I don't know what your idea is. So however you want to, you're guiding this. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, my reason for thinking that is that sometimes others see in us things that we don't see in ourselves. So I see you living out a particular story. So maybe if you don't mind, I'll use you as an example. Do I have your permission?
Sure.
Okay. So you're on what's called the cross of tension, and right now we won't even. I mean, that's a whole other thing. You can think of the theme of your actual incarnation cross, but we're going to look at them one by one, or four by four, so to speak, because remember, this is the sun and the earth, the sun and the earth. And so if we look at yours, you have gene key 21, 48, 38, and 39. 21 21 is the gate of biting through, the hunter huntress in human design. It's the gate that relates to valor at the highest level, to authority and to control. And so this is a journey from experiencing life at the shadow level, where you feel like you have to control everything. Um, and at the fear causes us to need to control things. But once we get to the level of love, the level of the gift, then a natural authority arises because of somebody being in touch with the heart. And when you're in that place, people treat you or confer upon you this natural authority and want to be loyal to you. And I mean, I know from working with you that this is a theme for you. I mean, you own and run a business, which is Clair-i-tea, obviously, and I can see how you are maturing and growing stronger in this. The Knights of the Round Table, if you want something to think, from a mythological perspective, this is how can we be of service, and through that service and through that love for humanity, gain, in a sense, an aura that uplifts people. So think, that the story of the Knights of the Round Table is quite compelling. There's this sense of them being loyal to a perspective of service, and the authority and the honor that came arose from that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying to you is that I see this in you, and I see this developing and strengthening, with the work that you've been doing, because I know of the work that you've been doing. I mean, some of it, as much, seeing you from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And gene key 48, which is the well, the gate, the gate of the well, the gate of depth. In the gene keys language, this is the journey from inadequacy to wisdom. And when we're afraid and we're trying to, in this gene key, fear drives us to want to know more. I need to know more. I need to know more so that I can, in a sense, deal with my inadequacy. If I only know more, then maybe I won't feel inadequate. But once you rise out of the fear place, then you begin to realize and trust life, and be aware that it's going to deliver to you everything that you need. And so resourcefulness arises, and trust in life's ability to deliver to you what it is you need. And wisdom arises from that, a wisdom of understanding how the world works. And I know you as a Christian woman, and the sense of your faith and your willingness and desire in your prayers to kind of serve the whole and serve, trust that God will provide for you, is very clear to me in how you have been living your life. I mean, here I am talking about you. Is there anything you want to mention in relationship to this exploration?
Well, when you talk about resourcefulness, it's all about trusting that something better will come along, or like it's like something didn't work out. Oh well, there's a better way, or there's another way, or
Yeah.
it's not like total failure. It's not like just dropping the whole thing and saying, oh, I can't do it. And part of that is not even wanting to start things, right? So we have this perfectionism within us
Mm,
that makes us not want to even initiate because we feel inadequate. But
right.
once we start moving and we just learn to use refinement, right? As one of our mentors says, you just refine. It's not a mistake. You just refine. Don't
Mm,
internalize all of that guilt and shame. Um, then life becomes a dance, right? That's what I notice most about that gene key. And coming
yeah.
from when the first one coming from Valor, my own experience was that of being traumatized as a child and being in fear of everything from the time I was small. So trying to control my environment so I wasn't hurt anymore was an important thing for me. Um,
Hmm.
but as I've grown and shed a lot of those fears, life becomes more enjoyable. Like the little things about driving in the snow or, you know, going in the dark or things like that. Like there's no like panic anymore. So then you can actually be present to the moments that are happening around you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful. I mean, for people who have the ears to hear, as you tell your story in relationship to what we've seen as the description, it fits. This is, I think of magnets and iron filings. It's like our own our own four primary energies, core essence and grounding, pull our lives into a certain pattern. I mean, for me, I have gene key number one, the gate of self-expression, where my sun is, and my grounding is in the gate of the direction of the self. And so, gate one is all about creativity and the relationship to that. And often at the shadow level, it's this sense of being cut off from any kind of creativity, being cut off from the spark of life, feeling dead and dull and like nothing is happening. But in moments, when I tap into, when I let go of that fear and let the process have its way, then I understand that those moments of emptiness um, inevitably lead in an unpredictable way to moments where everything is sparking, moments where everything feels fresh
Mm-hmm.
and everything feels new, and there's this sense of being connected to the energy of life, which you could call freshness at the gift level.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's certainly been the case for me. It's like there are many moments where I go through and I despair that I'll ever feel any sense of inspiration again. And then all of a sudden, without any warning, something shifts. I can't control it, and I'm feeling creative again. I'm feeling that interest in life, the spark in life.
Mm-hmm. It's like a
You
wave
know,
that you have to ride.
yes, and it's completely outside of my control.
Mm-hmm.
And with gate two, which is all about the purpose and the direction of life, it's the primary feminine. Um, this one teaches us that all of life is one thing, one single entity or unity. But fear causes us to feel like we're separated from life. And in that fear, it's like I feel lost, and I feel like, and that gets projected out onto the world too. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the world is lost. We're all going over a cliff. We're heading
Mm-hmm.
towards a cliff, towards Armageddon. We're going to screw up, and it can get very, there can be a real lostness to that.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going in the wrong direction. But in the moments when I'm feeling more, less fear, I also have moments where I feel like, oh my God, I can feel how my life is going in a particular direction. It's kind of like there's it's like pulling yourself along a rope that is tied at one end. The end is already set.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like the positive outcome is going to happen with a sense of inevitability, and that I'm locked into a trajectory that eventually is going to take me where I want to go. And in those moments, I feel this incredible sense of being oriented. I know exactly what the destination is. Or I don't know on an intellectual level, I couldn't describe it to you, but I feel it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there are these some of the some of the most painful moments in my life is when I got lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when we went on a cross Canada trip when I was a kid, and I got lost in a mall in Toronto. A farm kid who's not used to malls.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we took a cross country train trip, and I fell asleep in the day coach, and when I woke up, nobody was there, and I thought my family had left me on the train.
Mm-hmm.
They'd just forgotten about me. So I have many experiences of feeling really radically lost,
Mm-hmm.
and but I also have moments of feeling like I have this inevitable inbuilt sense of direction. So it
Mm-hmm.
really is part of my experience on a mythological level. It's part of my story.
Mm-hmm.
The story is Darren Hartwell was lost, and now he was found. That Amazing Grace
Amazing
song that
Grace.
touches so
Mm-hmm.
many people.
Mm-hmm.
But the lostness and the foundedness happens over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's built in as part of my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Do you
like
have any?
I watch you go through that. Like you'll be like in those moments of, oh, I just don't know. And then the next moment you're like, oh, I've created this thing. And I'm like, oh, that's so magical. And then, you know, it's, yeah. So I've watched you go through those peaks and valleys. So it is very evident when you understand somebody's design. If you don't understand somebody's design, it would be, oh, you're just like really moody, what is wrong with you? But when you actually put this stuff to practice, I think this is the thing, right? It helps us build better relationships where we can start to understand each other, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it has that dual role.
Yeah.
First of all, it helps me understand myself and make me realize that I'm living out a story that's my own unique one,
Hmm.
and that I can maybe have some sort of trust in my own inbuilt design,
Yeah.
and therefore lead a life that is more surrendered to God, surrendered to the divine. And as you say, on the other level, it's like it helps me have more space for the people around me because I
Hmm.
understand a little bit better about what their journey is.
And the other people have more space for you. Oh, he's just having a moment. Oh, he'll get through this. Oh, I'm so excited to see what he creates on the other side of that, right? Like,
Mm.
so you have an understanding, and it creates more of a, what is that word? Like, it's like a patience. It's like, it's the expectations are dropped because you know what will happen. Like, there's just a knowing, right? So,
Yeah.
mhm,
And look at it enough, and that sense of trust or allowing or knowing, or
mhm,
it starts to extend to to the people that but beyond that, to your basic understanding of the journey that we're all moving through.
mhm. Well, you picked a really big subject, and we're like quite a bit over time today. So, I guess this is like a two-parter. So, what we can do is continue looking at this next week. We can look at the other two gates of both of us and, explore. And like you guys, I encourage you to explore your own channels and gates and, get in there and look at other people's charts and see what that can invoke in you. We also sell this book at the store. This is one that Hartwell recommends called The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. It's a phenomenal book.
I mean, it's really a must-have for
Hmm.
people who are interested in this topic of their own personal mythology,
Hmm.
because these 64 gene keys are all about mythology. They're all about the 64 primary themes that underpin our lives, and of course, that's what we just finished going through,
Yeah.
week by week.
All
So
right.
treat yourself to that.
Exactly. So we'll look forward to more exploration next week. And with that, we'll say goodbye. We're sorry to keep you a little over time today, but you know, these things, when you dive into them, tend to be conversation starters. So if you need any help understanding your own design, Hartwell is here at Clair-i-tea. You're welcome to book an appointment. So we'd love to see you. Oh, and one more thing, we're having our anniversary celebration on Sunday from 12 to 5. So you can come in and experience the space. So look forward to seeing you there. Have a wonderful day. God bless.